Love. Some would say it took a backseat when the pandemic forced us apart. As a family-run and proudly Canadian-owned company, Charm Diamond Centers saw the need to bring us together with tales of love and created the Canadian Love Map podcast. Since then, we've shared hundreds of real, uplifting stories that prove love conquers all. So thank you for listening. We couldn't do it without you. And remember, love starts here.
What an incredible transformation in my perspective from those early days after the injury, where I would have traded my soul for the use of my legs. I wanted it all back. I thought I'd been given the cruelest blow ever, to now in this place thinking that I'm the luckiest person on the planet and how grateful I am for, the privilege of learning and growing and striving through it and continuing to strive through it each day.
Welcome back to the Canadian Love Map. I'm Nancy Regan. We're serving up part 2 of my conversation with Amanda and Rick Hansen today. In part 1, they set the scene. We heard the beautiful love story of how they met and how Rick managed to convince Amanda to drop everything to join the Man in Motion tour. Today, their story gets deeper and richer. So much so, I can't resist the pun that I'm about to spew. Sorry about this. Rick Hansen, Canadian hero and icon, shows how open-hearted he is, revealing himself as the man in emotion. Okay, so here's another story that, Rick, you've told me. We've known each other for many years, and this is my first time meeting Amanda. And I'm always so interested to hear about when you got back to North America and you were coming up the Eastern Seaboard. It seems to me that Amanda played a really pivotal role in that moment when things weren't quite as exciting as they had been in China, and people weren't aware of what you were doing.
Yeah, we had great hopes with the momentum out of China and getting prepared for the States and expecting that momentum to keep building up the Eastern Seaboard and across Canada at the home stretch. And when we came back to Florida, it was pretty quiet. I mean, people who knew about it were, enthusiastic, but we just didn't get the word out. We just organizationally weren't able to crack the nut. And it was really, really frustrating. And I just got into this real funk because I was tired and I was kind of disappointed, to say the least, and didn't have a lot of perspective. And I was trying to project. I'd made an agreement to delay the pace, slow it down a little bit to 80 kilometers a day to give more room for organizing and to make it more, impacting. And this meant 6 more months, on the tour, which meant coming across Canada in the middle of winter. And so I had all this in my mind, and yet now I'm in the funk of being disappointed. And I basically got to a place where, just after Florida, I just said, "Look, I'm done. I'm. What's the point? I'm going to quit."
Mm-hmm. And what kept you going? Oh, I wish you could see the look between them right now. Somebody get a screen grab of that. So beautiful. Amanda, tell me from your perspective about that moment.
Well, my heart just broke for Rick because at that point, we were all obviously disappointed, but mostly we were disappointed for Rick because to have been by his side, all those months and years, and to know that he had reached that point where he truly thought he couldn't do it. And yeah, we were so close. And I understood. And we even had, people from the office saying, well, maybe you should fly back and do an event in Toronto. And maybe you should, we can do some, and I remember saying to Rick, you cannot leave the road. And you cannot stop that. This is an understand. I was actually surprised that it took that long for it to happen. I thought he'd have his break point much earlier than that. I was quite surprised that it was there and then. So he just needed support he needed someone to listen. And, and I was that person for him. And I'm glad that I was that person for him, because I'm not quite sure what he would have done. Because, he's stubborn. And sometimes when he gets, ideas in his head, he does not let go of them. So in this one this took a little persuading, because it wasn't just, oh, you'll be fine. That wasn't what he needed. He needed to talk it through. He needed to sort of believe in himself again and realize and have faith that, yes, indeed, what we hoped would happen was going to happen. We just had to have faith.
Yeah, and I couldn't see it. At the time, I really was losing it, and I needed someone there for me at that most critical time. And Amanda was there, and yeah, and she really believed in me and the dream, and that was enough for me at the time.
So she described her role as having supported you through that. But Rick, what it sounds like to me, going back to that image of St. Elmo's fire, is she relit your fire.
Yeah. And that's the thing about a team and a journey. And there's sometimes, when people are no longer supporting, they're leading. And, we all take turns on the journey. And, yeah. That was one time, one big time when I needed Amanda to really be there, and she was amazing.
Was that moment a big seed of your decision to marry her, or to at least ask her to marry you?
Yeah.
Do you think there was a moment there when you were like, oh, okay, she's one to ride the river with, sort of?
Yeah. There's cumulative experiences when you go to battle and of life, and the tour was a huge crucible. And for me, one of my biggest challenges in relationships was, first of all, being able to cross that intimacy gap, and and to be able to really connect. And then the second was trust, and trust is, it's knowing that, it's knowing that someone will be there, and won't walk away when the going gets tough and when you need them most. And I think, Amanda demonstrated that.
Yeah.
Time and time again.
That might be the understatement of the century.
Yeah. And so how could you not love someone and think about the future when you're lucky enough to have someone like that in your life?
Yeah, so beautiful. And that was a moment that started a turnaround as well, because I know you then got a big sponsor on board and you headed for Canada with a renewed sense of vigor.
Yeah, it was unbelievable what literally just around that corner at that time when Amanda encouraged me to hang in there was the appearance of Michael J. Fox, and being on the the Today Show with Brian Gumbel, and meeting Bobby Orr in Boston, and it was amazing coming back to St. John's, Newfoundland. The folks in Newfoundland were just amazing. It was my 29th birthday, and it was an incredible birthday moment. And we were welcomed home to our country, and it started a momentum that just cascaded across the country. And it was so close to not being that moment because I was ready to give up hope.
Yeah, that's a beautiful part of the story. I met you when you went through Bedford, Nova Scotia, and I remember the electricity in the crowd and the sheer disbelief of what you had accomplished. I don't remember meeting Amanda, but I sure remember meeting you, and I agreed with her at the time that you were handsome and charming. and then, of course, when we met later on in the years when I was broadcasting, we struck up a friendship. But I am really anxious to know the story of how the engagement actually happened.
Well, it started actually when I made up my mind truly made up my mind in South Carolina. And when Mike and I, Amanda's brother, had been sent on the road to look after her
Hey,
and keep
and I didn't need looking after.
keep her away from me, and he obviously failed miserably.
Chaperone.
We were together 24/7, Amanda and I, and so it was hard to find any moments where you could actually kind of pull anything over on her, and so I had to actually literally fake an argument, and it was over something, and I can't even remember what it was, but it was, and I just slammed the door and wheeled off, and Mike had been waiting for me, and we went off to the jewelers and picked out a ring, and I had to borrow money from everybody to to pay for it. I promised I'd pay it back, and didn't have any money, but I promised I would. And so we bought the ring, and Mike kept it for months until we ended up in Shediac, New Brunswick, and that was the moment when I finally I didn't know when that would be, but I knew this had to be it, because it was just the right moment. And there was a little motel room, and the owner gave up his personal room, and he had a little refrigerator set up and some champagne and lobster and a little teddy bear, personal teddy bear there, and it was like, it wasn't exactly your bachelor moment or bachelorette moment, but probably not even close to the script. But at the end of the day, it was heartfelt, and that was when we got to that moment where I proposed.
Okay, that's one for the ages. Amanda, tell me from your perspective about that moment that he popped the question.
Well, I mean, again, you have to picture that motel room that we were staying in, and I mean, honest to goodness, it was an older decor, and it was this guy's personal teddy bear on the bed, and it was we actually did have a lobster dinner, which was quite fancy, and
plastic bibs and all. Did you have plastic bibs?
I think we didn't get the bibs. We should have, though. That would have been a nice touch. And then so had our moment, and we got up the next morning, and a couple of the crew member noticed, because I actually had the ring on, but we had sworn, and our manager had told the manager of the motel, because she thought it'd be special for him to know that that's where it happened, but she swore him to secrecy until we could get through the wheeling day and then make an announcement, tell our family first, and then, because there was no time, right? We were hitting the road.
Yeah.
And so we wheel that day, and we end their day in Petitcodiac, and there's messages waiting for us, and from family, and they're going, what, you didn't tell us what's going on? It was already on the news. So I guess the motel manager, in his excitement, had to tell somebody, and then that somebody had to tell somebody, and the next thing we know, it's on the news, and our whole family knows, and we haven't been able to tell anybody. And
we're not sure whether it was the hotel manager or not. No one will really tell.
Yeah,
exactly. Well, I think it's kind of sweet if it was him, actually, to be honest.
I think so too. I think that excitement, as you say, he couldn't contain it.
And it was so cute, because a number of years later, we'd already had, I think, our oldest daughter, Emma. We got a package in the mail, and it was the teddy bear. And he said in his little note, he said, "This teddy has never been the same.
Stop
He
it.
needs to be with you guys, not with me."
Oh my gosh. That is, so do you still have the teddy bear? You'd better.
Yes. Somewhere in storage, we have that teddy bear.
In the archives.
He was a beaten up teddy bear. He'd been around a long time.
Oh, well, that's like Rick on that tour, the beating that his body took. I suppose there's a similarity to be drawn.
Yeah. It was very sweet of him, I have to say. My goodness.
That is an absolutely beautiful story. And I have to speed along now to the end of the tour. I could talk to you for 5 days straight and not let you go. But I know that's not the agreement here today. So I do think, though, that there was another really important role that Amanda played when you had finished the tour, Rick, and you had to decide what you were going to do next, that shifting gears moment. What was her contribution, going back to that sense of you being a team? What was her contribution in that choice moment?
Well, yeah, here we are, like, finished the tour. Then that was in May of 87. And then we ended up having our wedding on October 10th, not that long later. And at the time, I'd set a goal that I was going to, finish the tour, help wind it down, and set up everything from, the legacy fund point of view, and, the board and the foundation and stuff. And then we were just going to get back into my athletic career and regain my world title. And, and who knows where I would be, X number of months later. But I was struggling and wasn't able to get motivated, and had to come to a big decision that, my life had changed beyond the fact that we were married, that, the whole experience of the tour had changed me. And, and Amanda and I talked a lot about it, and she really supported my retirement. And, and that was a big transformation, letting go of a big part of my identity, and then finding confidence to be able to recognize the skills that I had accumulated, over all those years, and apply them in other disciplines. And we decided that we would actually accept a role to be the Commissioner General for Expo 88 in Brisbane, to get away from the hype of the Canadian awareness of what I was all about, and get settled, and get our life on track, and try to come back at it from a place of integrity of where we're at today and where we're moving towards the future. And that was a huge step, because I think if there was a real pull to want to just keep going on that momentum, and I was not ready for that, and yet I clearly wasn't ready to go back to an old goal that was no longer relevant. So I needed that time and that space, and she really supported that decision and was there with me on that. It was huge.
This podcast is brought to you by Charm Diamond Centers, Canada's largest family-owned jewelry store. They are proud to be putting love on the map, and the staff at Charm Diamond Centers are thrilled to be a part of your love story too. So visit charmdiamondcenters.com or one of your local stores. Love starts here. You had raised over $26 million, which, was that a shock to you?
Yeah, we set a goal of $1 million at the beginning, because fundraising was a secondary objective, and it was so hard to start. We upped it to 10 million because we thought, well, it's so hard to start. Let's at least set an ambitious goal, which we thought was completely unattainable. And raising 26 was exponential, and it was really a big responsibility. And so we really honored that, and set it in motion so that it would pay dividends and have an impact, not just for the moment, but for the future. And here we are 35 years later, and it's still paying dividends, because the foundation is established, and, it's no longer one man in motion, it's many. And we have a board of directors that's been stellar, and a CEO, and staff, and volunteers, and supporters, and people involved in the movement, and it's their movement, not mine, and that's it's our movement. And so it's really satisfying to think that, Amanda and I and the team that really started that journey, and all those who supported it during the Man in Motion tour, created something that was a wonderful beginning. It was amazing to know. At the time, we couldn't have foreseen it, but that's how it unfolded, for sure.
Amanda, what credit will you take in helping Rick on that path to creating the Rick Hansen Foundation?
Oh, I choose not to take credit, really.
I know, but I'm putting
ways.
you on the spot.
Yeah. I think what became apparent when we got home, we were both completely burnt out. Rick on every level, physically was a huge toll on him, and the recovery from the tour took a long, long time. So as far as the foundation goes, I mean, we knew, and after the tour was over, all of a sudden, the volunteers have gone home, and there's a very small group of people trying to manage this money, the society at the time, and what was our role going to be? And I originally thought, well, I'll go back to work, and Rick will go off and be a phys ed teacher, and we'll live a normal life. And then, but all this stuff was still around. There was letters and, things pouring in, and it was in every aspect of our life. Every waking moment of our life was still all about the tour. And so we had to come to an understanding that this was our life, and this was going to be our life. And as much as we might have thought, okay, that chapter's done, let's just move on, that wasn't going to happen. And it was a conscious decision. It wasn't an easy one, because it wasn't what I thought was going to happen, and I don't think it's what Rick thought. But together, we knew there was no other option. And it required both of us to buy in on it, because it again, as I say, it was part of every second of our life.
It had taken on a life of its own, really.
It had, and yet it was intricately linked with us, right?
Yeah. And there was an integrity to it that Amanda, again, like in many steps and decisions on the journey during the tour and afterward, and in our life, we're a partnership and we're a team, and her advice and perspective has always been integral and incredibly valuable, because we were able to kind of forge decisions together and speak our minds and be honest with each other and try to find truths. And I think the truth was we had a responsibility, but not only to what we'd created and the promise we made to Canadians and people around the world, but also a truth to our lives. And we had to start to really reflect on who we were as we were growing up and what purpose we had, real purpose, not just goals or activities or pastimes, and how did that resonate? And it took that space, that reflection, set up that responsibility. Where do you want to be? And in reality, as time went on, it converged back again. And here we are, in perfect sync and harmony with that promise and that resonance, and still moving forward as human beings in the balance of our relationship, our family, and our commitment to paying it forward and making a difference and making the world healthier and more inclusive.
Well, you have done that. You have done that in a way no one ever could have foreseen, I think, including you, no matter how big your dreams were. But I did laugh when Amanda said, we thought we were going to get back to a normal life. I couldn't help but chuckle. Like, oh, so much for that.
I know, we really did.
But instead, you have literally had to share your husband with Canadians for your whole marriage. I'm not the only Canadian who's in love with your husband. They're all across the country in the most platonic, most honorable way. But you're in love with the man, and you've had also this private life. I know it's been hard probably at times, because he has such a public persona, and he's been out there so much and traveling. But tell me about the beautiful private life you have fostered and cultivated.
Well, yeah, exactly. We have, and it has been very intentional. And I, first and foremost, I can say without a doubt that Rick has been the most devoted and present husband and father through all of this. And regardless of how much he has to give of himself to others, and he does it happily so, when he comes home at the end of the day, there's never a question as to why he's there and who he's there for. So that has always been kind of the benchmark of how we've lived our lives. We did purposely lead a very simple life with our girls. And we did not make big fanfare of who Rick was to a point where I can remember one day Emma came back and said, "Mom, there's this video in our library at school and it's about Dad." And I went, "What, have we told her about you wheeling around the world yet? Like, did we forget to tell her that one?" But, we really wanted them to have an absolutely normal, everyday, regular life. And I think we succeeded at that. I really do. And, there were challenges to it. And there were times when they didn't get their dad when they wanted to get their dad. If they were going to the P&E, the exhibition, and they were on his lap and they were heading to the roller coaster and he's got to stop about 20 times along the way, that got a little old.
Yeah, it's like, Dad, do you know that person? I go, "No, sweetie." Well, how come you keep talking to these strangers? You tell us to never talk to strangers.
They were too smart.
Political life is like that, but political life typically is finite, and yours just goes on and on. So you don't get to step out of political office and go back to anonymity.
Exactly.
So your grandparents now. And I know that has given Rick such joy. I'm sure it has you, Amanda, as well.
Oh, it absolutely has. It's been the greatest gift. I mean, everyone tells you this, and it's not wrong, that the best thing about being a grandparent is that you get to do it all over again, but without the day-to-day responsibilities of, putting them to bed every night and all of that. But honestly, our grandsons are such a beautiful, beautiful delight to us. We get to see them. We're lucky that way. And I just, and they're boys, so it's different than the girls we raised.
Get the hormonal balance finally.
Which is kind of fun too.
You had 3 girls and now 2 grandsons. Love it.
Yeah, well, 3 grandsons. We did have Reed was our firstborn grandson, and he passed sadly at birth. But we still very much consider that we have 3 grandsons, Reed, Everett, and Atticus, and they are everything. They really are.
And you learned in that chapter how much love and grief are connected, didn't you?
Very much so. That was such a painful, difficult, tragic time. And most assuredly, toughest on our daughter and son-in-law losing their first child. But for all of us, it was catastrophic. We didn't expect, we never in a million years imagined that something like that could happen. And yet stillbirth is common, common enough that it should be talked about more because it's a huge loss and it's so painful.
A knot in the umbilical cord, like who would have imagined?
I know.
Yeah. And a perfect pregnancy and
a full-term, beautiful baby boy.
One moment you're 24 hours away from welcoming your grandson into the world, and the next moment you're told something that's unimaginable. Yeah. It's life, and no one's immune from it. And we all have to endure the ups and downs and challenges that are just around the corner. And fortunately, they worked hard, and those 2, Emma and Aaron, stayed together and lived it with grace, and their grief is truly a reflection of their love for little Reed, and so is ours. And we honor him every day.
Rick, I also know, and I found this so inspiring, that your daughter took a page out of your book and took a very painful chapter and turned it into purpose because she created a book, a beautiful book about her experience, right?
She did. Actually, someone approached her because she couldn't really speak a lot about her experiences, in her grief, but she wrote, in her blog and her posts, and someone asked her to consider putting her experience and thoughts into a book, and she agreed. And, last year she came up with, this beautiful tribute to little Reed, and also, to Everett and Atticus, and being a loving mother in grief and in love and on her journey. And so we're super proud of her. And we hope, because so many people around the world came to her to offer encouragement and support during this difficult time and to talk about a stigma that's often not discussed. And so we hope that her legacy and her book is there to help encourage others who will go through it inevitably many times over these years to come. And it's definitely a great legacy for her children and for our family, for sure.
It's another of those pieces of love that I talked about at the beginning of this conversation. Love is wound through your story in so many ways. What is it, Rick, that you love most about Amanda?
Wow. What I love most about Amanda is her vitality for life. I love her integrity. I love the fact that she is aligned in the values that we have and share. I love her commitment and loyalty for our relationship and our journey. And I love the fact that she is a dedicated mother and is the CEO of our home and essentially our family, and blows me away with her wisdom and her insight. And she's a true inspiration to me. I admire her immensely. I respect her, and I'm her biggest fan.
Well,
Biggest fan.
That's a tough act to follow, Amanda, but the floor is
Yeah,
yours
why didn't
now.
you ask me first?
What is it you love most about Rick, Amanda?
Wow, that's a big question and a big answer. What I love most about Rick, his integrity, his strength, his compassion, his vulnerability that people don't often know about, his ability to see the big picture. He's a visionary, and that's a real gift. And not a lot of people have it to the extent that he does. And he is loyal, and he is loving. And he, as I said at the beginning, he has and is the best husband and father that I have ever been witness to. And that's saying a lot, because my dad was pretty special.
Oh, I love it. That's so great. I guess I'd like to end, and I wouldn't like to end at all, to tell you the truth. I'd like to keep going, but I'd like to end with something that really struck me in my soul when Rick said this to me one time. And that was, I asked him, if he could go back and change, would he trade the life that he's lived for the use of his legs again? And Rick, what is your answer to that?
Yeah, I'd never go back and change my life for the use of my legs. What an incredible transformation in my perspective from those early days after the injury, where I would have traded my soul for the use of my legs. I wanted it all back. I thought I'd been given the cruelest blow ever, to now in this place thinking that I'm the luckiest person on the planet, and how grateful I am for, the privilege of learning and growing and striving through it, and continuing to strive through it each day, and to have been so blessed with the people that I've met, the lessons I've learned, and what really matters, is to be fortunate enough to be whole and to give love and to receive it, to be part of a family, to have a loving wife, partner, children, grandchildren, a purpose in life, and being on an adventure to try to unfold each day and just keep stretching it out for as long as you can with every breath. And that's, why would I trade that for anything? It's been amazing.
So beautiful. Thank you both for everything you have given to our country. Thank you for doing this today. And thanks for your inspiring love story. Really beautiful.
Well, thank you,
Thank
Nancy,
you,
and
Nancy.
thanks for your friendship over all these years. It's been a wonderful journey, and I really appreciate it. I look forward to seeing you in person in Halifax when the cloud parts and we get to travel again.
Hallelujah. Me too.
Stay healthy.
Have a wonderful Christmas with your family.
Thank you.
Okay.
You as well.
Take care.
Thanks so much for listening to the Canadian Love Map. If you love us, please subscribe and share. We'll be back next week with another love story to add to the map. This podcast is presented and made possible by Charm Diamond Centers. It's hosted by me, Nancy Regan, and is produced and distributed by Podstarter.